Picture this. A Spartan mother hands her son a massive, heavy bronze shield. She doesn't say, "Be safe." She doesn't say, "I love you." Instead, she delivers a single, absolutely chilling sentence. And then she just lets him walk away to a battle he literally will not survive. In this Explainer today, we're going to dive right in and see exactly how an entire society was engineered from the ground up to make a moment like that possible.
Come back with this shield, or come back dead on it. That is the literal phrase. That's the exact sentence those 300 Spartan men heard from their families right before marching out to face a truly colossal army. Now, what's really wild to wrap your head around is that back then, this sentence wasn't some act of cruelty. Not at all. By Spartan standards, it was an act of profound, deep love. It was honestly the kindest, most normal thing a mother could say to her boy. See, losing your shield meant you dropped it so you could run away faster, which was the ultimate shame. Coming back dead on it, that meant you held the line.
Section 1. 480 BCE and the Persian threat.
Now, to understand how any society could view that parting sentence as completely normal, we have to look at the massive existential threat they were staring down. The year is 480 BCE. Greece isn't a unified country yet. It's really just a patchwork of fiercely independent cities, places like Athens, Corinth, and Sparta. And bearing down on all of them is the massive Persian Empire, led by King Xerxes, who is absolutely determined to conquer every last one of them. The sheer terrifying scale of this mismatch was staggering. I mean, ancient legends claimed it took 7 days and 7 nights just for Xerxes' soldiers to march across a single bridge. And while modern historians, they debate the exact figures, the most conservative estimates still place the Persian forces at well over 100,000 men. So to try and stop them, a small coalition of Greek cities sent a vanguard to the front line, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans.
So the real question here is, why? Why would any group of guys willingly agree to this? We need to look past this whole idea of simple bravery. Bravery gets you through a dangerous moment, right? It helps you fight when you absolutely have to. But bravery alone does not make you stand in front of hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers and calmly choose certain death when you could just leave. Something else made that possible. Something far stranger and far more disturbing.
To find the actual answer, we have to look at the agoge. Because the Battle of Thermopylae didn't start on a muddy battlefield. It started in a delivery room decades earlier. The agoge was this incredibly brutal, state-run program entirely designed to raise and condition Spartan boys. The literal moment a boy was born, city elders examined him. If he looked weak or flawed in any way, he was openly left outside the city walls to die. Sparta's entire survival depended on producing ruthless soldiers, and they started that process on day 1.
If a baby actually survived that first inspection, his childhood was essentially over at age 7. He was permanently taken by the state. From that day forward, the military was his family. He moved from the early years of the agoge straight into his teenage years, where he faced genuinely brutal combat drills and organized fights that frequently ended in very serious injuries. And by age 20, well, if he survived the whole ordeal, he finally became a hoplite, a heavily armored foot soldier fighting shoulder to shoulder with a spear and that famous heavy shield.
Let's zoom in on those early years for a second, because they were entirely about systematic deprivation. These kids were deliberately underfed. Why? To force them to steal food just to survive. If they got caught, they were severely punished for being sloppy, but the act of stealing itself was secretly encouraged as stealth training. They were forced to walk totally barefoot through freezing Spartan winters just to toughen up the skin on their feet, and they were only given one single piece of clothing for the entire year, no matter what the weather was doing.
But it actually gets worse. As these boys grew up, the lessons shifted from basic deprivation to intentional, highly public pain. Ancient historians documented this horrifying yearly contest where boys were whipped repeatedly in front of the entire city. And the craziest part? The ultimate prize didn't go to the boy who could dodge the whip or avoid the pain. The prize went to the boy who could endure the hardest whipping without making a single sound. The goal was never just survival, the goal was absolute silence.
Section 2. Holding the hot gates.
Okay, so 13 years of this unimaginable conditioning brings us all the way back to 480 BCE. King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, alongside a few thousand allied troops, march up to a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae, which literally translates to the hot gates. And this was absolutely brilliant.
The Greeks deliberately chose a bottleneck because the pass was so incredibly narrow, only a small handful of Persian soldiers could physically reach the front line at any given moment. This completely neutralized the massive Persian numbers. It was a total game changer. For 2 full days, the Spartans locked their shields together and completely dominated the front line, turning back wave after wave of Xerxes' massive army.
But on the 3rd day, that incredible Greek advantage was completely shattered by a betrayal. The ancient historian Herodotus, who was actually one of the very first people to systematically record history, tells us about a local resident who ruined everything. Whether he was motivated by a big payout or just sheer terror of the Persian army, this local guy revealed a hidden goat path to the Persians, a path that circled directly behind the Greek position at the Hot Gates.
And just like that, the bottleneck didn't matter anymore. The Persian soldiers used that hidden path to totally surround the Greeks from behind. Once the allied Greek troops realized they were going to be attacked from both the front and the back, most of them retreated to save themselves. But Leonidas and his 300 Spartans stayed. They moved into a final defensive position and fought a violently desperate battle. When their spears snapped and their weapons were lost, they didn't quit. They fought on with their bare hands and their teeth rather than surrender.
The toll was absolute. 300. Every single Spartan who stood in that pass died exactly where they stood. They didn't win the Battle of Thermopylae. Days later, the Persian army broke right through the pass and continued their devastating march into Greece.
Section 3. Beyond the Legend.
Even though they lost the battle, that 3-day delay at Thermopylae bought the rest of the Greek cities absolutely crucial time to prepare and unite. Within roughly a year, that unified Greek force completely defeated the Persian invasion at the massive battles of Salamis and Plataea. But this is where we kind of have to be honest and separate the myth from the reality. Modern historians are quick to point out that the framing of 300 Spartans alone against the world is highly effective propaganda. It deliberately erases the thousands of other allied Greek soldiers who also fought and died at Thermopylae. But while the numbers in the legend might be pumped up a bit, the terrifying reality of the agoge is not. The systematic cruelty, the public whippings, children being torn from their families at age 7, all of that is undisputed, heavily documented historical fact.
I want you to think about the last time you really wanted to quit something hard. Maybe it was a brutal workout, a really difficult conversation, or a huge project you just gave up on halfway through. Your brain naturally offered you an exit, and some part of you took it. And you know what? That isn't weakness. That is exactly how almost every human brain is naturally built to work. We are fundamentally wired to survive, and survival often means knowing exactly when to retreat.
Those 300 men at Thermopylae, they had that exact same natural human instinct once. But starting when they were literally just 7 years old, it was systematically and brutally trained right out of them, one freezing winter and one silent beating at a time. They didn't hold that mountain pass against 100,000 men simply because they were fearless. They stood there because 13 years of extreme conditioning left them without retreat as a mental option. Fear had nowhere left to live. So what does it say about humanity that our most legendary examples of bravery might actually just be the result of erasing our most fundamental human instincts?